Last week I talked about the evolution of the mind, and in that talk we shared ideas about the thinker and the mind and the brain and the centers in the brain. We learned that actually thinking is quite complicated. The whole process is complicated. But the point is the realization that our thinking does evolve. And the reason it evolves is because of the process of working on ourselves. When we work on ourselves, what is happening a little bit at a time, gradually, the centers in the mental body become activated and open. At that point, the thinker, aka the solar angel, is better able to send its ideas and vision and impressions through the mental body into our brain, our etheric brain. And at that moment, when these centers have been purified, like the head center, for example, the heart center, when these centers have been, let's say we could look at these centers as our filter system. And when we have cleaned these filter systems out, then the ideas and impressions coming from the thinker, this inner presence, also called the solar angel, then becomes clearly registered in our brain, and our consciousness and unfolding human soul begins to act on these impressions and ideas without any distortion. So today I'm going to talk about three thinkers. And once I finish talking about the three thinkers, then in the time left, I'll share what higher thinking is and what obstructs our higher thinking. So there are three kinds of thinkers. The first one is the cosmic thinker. Cosmic with a K. And not only is it a K, it's a capital K. So cosmic thinker is one of the three kinds of thinkers. Then we have the inner thinker, which we talked about last week, called the inner presence, called the solar angel. And then the third thinker, this is very interesting. The third thinker is called the small thinker. Where there are small thinkers in the lower kingdoms, like the mineral kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, the animal kingdoms. In the human kingdom, thinking becomes individual. So now we understand the three thinkers, or at least we know about them, and now I'm going to elaborate from the teaching, what the teaching says about these three thinkers. So let's consider the capital K, cosmic thinker. The cosmic thinker, within all manifested universes, there is one thinker called the cosmic thinker. Let us say, this is the esoteric teaching, let us say the cosmic thinker thinks the whole universe, all universes, into manifestation, into existence. So what does this mean to us? It means that the thoughts of this great thinker are everywhere and in everything through an electrical substance which permeates everything. So the cosmic thinker manifests or thinks the universe into existence. See, this this is the esoteric teaching. Now, the exoteric thinkers and religious thinkers will say, well, God created the universe in one day. Science will say, through this cosmic bang, or explosion, the world came into existence. So that's the superficial understanding. The hidden understanding, the mystery of life, is to recognize now, since we are all esotericists, that there is a great cosmic thinker, and it is this cosmic thinker that thought the universe into existence. Now, I want you just to think about this. What do we do as individuals? Don't we think things into manifestation? See, as above, so below. The difference is sometimes what we think into existence is missing an arm or a leg or a foot or a shoe, or a dress or a jacket. And then we wonder, how did this happen? How did I miss this or that? That's because we're still not in harmony or in alignment with this great cosmic thinker. But we are working toward that. The thoughts of this great thinker. Well, let me share this, that I'm told that, or I read that in, there's another term for this cosmic thinker called Mahat, M-A-H-A-T, which is a Sanskrit word. The ancient Greeks also taught about this great cosmic thinker, only they called this thinker Nous, N-O-U-S. I'm probably mispronouncing it. Doesn't make any difference. It is what it is. Our unfolding human soul is innately in harmony with the cosmic thinking. But now this is important, as our unfolding human soul evolves, he develops his own thinking. As our unfolding human soul develops, he begins to think on his own as an individual. Thinking is a process of the orchestration of life as a whole. We just cannot think. Even if we're thinking stupidly, we're still thinking. Even if we have extreme mental health problems, we're still thinking. See, in that dark place, we're still thinking. So thinking is the process of orchestration of life as a whole. When we, you and I, humanity, can be a co-worker with this great thinker or composer, and I love to think of the cosmic thinker as a composer, as a musician. It's just a natural flow for me to think about it that way. But we are all composers. So what we are doing is, through the composition of our own thoughts, we are gradually moving our thoughts in alignment with this great cosmic thinker. The inner thinker. Let me back up a minute. I'm kind of repeating my notes before I get here, so I've got to regroup. Okay, here we go. It takes a long time before our soul registers the thought of the cosmic thinker, as well as the inner thinker. In the meantime, until that contact is steady and constant, there is instinct. There is instinct. Instinct that is resourced from many of our past incarnations, stored in the atoms of the human being, which we know are called permanent atoms. These instincts then are what we call the smaller thinkers. These instincts are the smaller thinkers. Now, if you have time to think about this, and you remember what I said in the very beginning about smaller thinkers, the small thinkers are like the mineral kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, the animal kingdom. Now put it all together. Okay, let me talk about the inner thinker. The inner thinker is our solar angel. It's also in the teachings written as the capital S soul, uppercase S. Through long ages, this inner presence holds itself as a hidden central energy. Imagine this. When it's like I'm still watching recordings of the life and the biography of Einstein. You know, some of what I'm learning about his life is kind of despicable, because we like to hold these great thinkers and inventors as heroes. But the reality of it is they're in a human body. And as long as they're in a human body, they're still bringing some of those instincts with them from previous incarnations that are trying to take hold of the present and creating obstacles for their future. Nonetheless, Einstein had an alignment, and this of course is hypothetical because I never really talked to him, although my son's father was a friend of Einstein, and they exchanged letters, and they gave me these letters and a booklet that Einstein had written and sent a few copies to us. So I feel like I have a little contact, vis-a-vis friends with his life. But nonetheless, he was a great thinker. His thinking was the result of being in alignment with the solar angel and perhaps in alignment with the great cosmic thinker. So let me go back to what I just said a minute ago, that the inner presence holds itself as a hidden central energy. It can only control our personality in the beginning during our dark and critical times. Why is that? Because that's when we're the most vulnerable, it seems, and the most needy. And because of our need and our vulnerability, we're more open and receptive, to that guidance. However, its presence helps us to develop our mental body. The presence of the inner life of this solar angel, which is our inner life, makes it possible for us to develop our mental body, and gradually over time, we become more responsive to its ideas, and these ideas inspire us through the centers in our mental body, also in our etheric and physical brain. Okay, now the small thinker. For many ages, the small thinker within us, in the individual person, is limited to the physical body, serving only the needs of the physical body. This is why the teachings tell us as we are expanding our consciousness, as we are releasing more light into our consciousness so that we can eventually be in constant contact with this inner presence and ultimately the cosmic thinker, not to continue to build that physical body. If you do, and I know not everybody's going to agree with me on this, but if you do, you are further anchoring yourself, your human soul, your spark, in dense matter. This is why we are told that Hatha Yoga, which is a 1,000,000-year-old yoga practice, is stop doing it. Here we are trying to, as spiritual beings, expand our consciousness, eradicate these small thinkers so that the inner presence takes control over the human soul, and the human soul takes control over the personality. But if we still think that life is just about my physical body and I better get out there and run 20 miles a day and lift weights and do this and that, to strengthen and strengthen and strengthen that physical body to where we have to get, I think of the men that I've known that they bulk up, and they have to get larger shirts because the sleeves, will split open because of the bulk. Well, okay. What good is a bulky arm? I'm sure it has some merit, but it definitely is not expanding our consciousness. So eventually, these small thinkers in the human form begin to organize the bodies so they become integrated, and the way that happens is the result of the human soul now awakening. The awakening as a result of the impulse and the rays coming from the solar angel. But we cannot make a breakthrough into higher thinking until we free ourselves from the dominance of the thinking of our three bodies and their individual interests. See the science in this? It's just amazing. After the small thinker's emancipation and freedom from the pressures of his vehicles, he tries to bring about an integrated personality. Each small thinker must put his own mechanism in order throughout the ages, releasing his mechanism to the sensitivity of the higher guidance, and in this case, the thinker, the inner presence. So this little thinker, using the thoughts of the inner presence, navigates the course of his life in many circumstances and conditions. If that small thinker is not navigating according to the weather forecast coming from our inner presence that says, don't go there, go there. Don't go over there, go here. See, now we have a wise forecaster. But if the small thinker says, no, I'm going to do this on my own. See how he's navigating our physical and emotional and our mental body, into the past, into the history of incarnations that we're trying to eradicate so we can move forward. The real thinker never imposes himself on the little thinkers. but helps them to have their own original pure thoughts as much as possible. The human soul, who has the capacity to think, does think mechanically and becomes an automaton when he is lost in the thinking of the physical, astral, and mental atoms of the centers and has no thought of his own. Meditation is a process of discrimination, how we can discern a higher thought from the thoughts of previous incarnations, the thoughts stored in these permanent atoms. This is why seed thought meditation is the only way to fly if you are an esotericist, if you want to expand your consciousness. So our soul begins to think only when he becomes aware of the thinking of the inner presence and develops his own thinking to provide better conditions for his personality. This small thinker in us, now let me not go there, let's just say this. I'm trying to simplify this. Our unfolding human soul must develop his own thinking. Look at the task that this spark, our unfolding human soul, has to take on. It's absolutely incredible, and we want to enable and create a better environment for our soul so that it can break away, become independent from being an automaton, being mechanical, and to really, really think through the light of the inner presence. He must also, our soul must also develop his thinking independent from other individuals' thinking and mass thinking. Independent thinking is an effort to think in harmony. This is very important to recognize and understand what independent thinking is, so you don't default into egotistical thinking or vanity. Independent thinking is an effort to think in harmony with not only the presence within yourself, but also with the cosmic thinker. The cosmic thinker, the thinker of the universe, the universal thinker. The lower kingdoms are indeed swayed by this cosmic thinker. But in the human kingdom, the thinking becomes individual. The cosmic thinker works with the lower kingdoms. He must also provide, and when I say he, I'm not speaking feminine, masculine, that the cosmic thinker is a man. So please, it's using these, what do they call it, pronouns, of he and she. Think beyond that. Think beyond that. I could say he, she, but that's just weird. So this cosmic thinker must also provide various means to awaken the power of thinking, and in doing so provides, this is so incredible, it's so beautiful, I just get so excited to know these things, that this cosmic thinker provides great individualities to teach the science of thinking. See, like Einstein. And beyond. For example, they are called great beings, like Sanat Kumara. He is a great being, the Lord of Shambhala, the Lord, the solar Lord of the planet, or the sun, and the planetary Lord, great beings, great lives, archangels, avatars, saviors, leaders, and solar angels. They cyclically appear and indwell in humanity and even in man to teach the science of thinking. Through the process of evolution, our human soul makes itself sensitive to higher thinkers. The human soul is an ever progressive light. That's us. That's our soul. Our soul is an ever progressive light. Innately, he is in harmony with cosmic thinking, but at the same time, as he evolves, he develops his own thinking. And this is where we find our geniuses. You know, Mozart. It's like, I was reading the other day a story by Torquem Serdarian, who was talking about this horrible movie that came out about the life of Mozart. Because I saw that movie, I think a number of us did, and it was so horrifying. The way they depicted Mozart as being crazy, insanely crazy, when this man was a musical genius. We're still playing his music, listening to it. These great symphony orchestras are still performing and learning how to perform his great music. When these great ones are a little bit different from the common man tries to belittle their greatness. It's so sad. Often the human soul's thinking is unconsciously different from the cosmic thinker, just like it is unconsciously different from the thinking of the inner presence, the solar angel that is trying to inspire the human soul. This is really important to think about. You can apply it to your own life. These moments of differences are the moments of crises, the moments of learning, adjustment, pain, and suffering that ultimately and finally leads to harmony. So during the times when our human soul's thinking is different from the solar angel, these moments of differences become moments of crises. If we develop our minds, we will be able to avoid creating causes which will lead us into destruction. This means that by using the higher levels of our mind, our soul will try to discover these laws and principles in life through which he can use the energies and force in nature for his infinite progress and for the progress of all life forms in all kingdoms in nature. When the human soul fuses his light with the thinker in the higher mind, this is when we begin to cultivate higher thinking. And our human soul itself is engaged in higher thinking and is no longer using the thinking of the solar angel. Higher thinking does not exclude the use of lower levels, but handles them. And handles them in such a way that they are all harmonized. The lower and the higher are harmonized and synthesized in an effort of higher thinking. Higher thinking requires 5 factors: intuitive impressions, willpower. This is when we are functioning through the substance and the light and the love and the psychic energy of the solar angel. This is what we are doing. We are using intuitive impression, willpower, visualization, the ability to sustain our consciousness on the frequency of the registered impression, and I would tell you that is very difficult. Why? Because we are living in dense matter. And when, let's say, for example, I know I go through this when I put together a Sunday talk, that energy is so intense and so fiery that for years I could only write like 3 to 4 to 5 minutes at a time, and then I'd have to stop. I couldn't concentrate. Concentration meaning I couldn't hold and sustain my consciousness in that light, in that fire. So it takes time and years in some cases. And the same with the group. When a group function together in a state of harmony, when they are aligned with the solar angel of the group, not everyone has yet cultivated their consciousness to where they can sustain the frequency of the registered impressions that are coming into the mind of the group, the soul of the group. Sometimes it's so fiery and the frequency is so pure that the person breaks down, the individual within the group breaks down, and they begin to have problems, and they leave the group for their own survival. It's like putting your hand. How long can you put your hand in fire? Not very long. You know, this is spiritual fire we're talking about, and it affects all the centers in our physical brain, etheric brain, astral body, and mental body. So that's the fourth one. Higher thinking requires that we have the ability to sustain our consciousness on the frequency of the registered impressions. And finally, then we have the ability to transmit the energy from the higher mind and the spiritual triad and create. Now, there are 5 hindrances to these factors. The first is imagination. These are hindrances which keep us from developing higher thinking. So imagination that is carried on by selfish, separative, and earthbound desires. It is the hindrance of imagination that will prevent you from penetrating into the higher mind. Or if you somehow find a way to penetrate into that higher mind, you misuse the energies which have leaked from the higher mind. And this is what happens with some of our great scientists. They discovered the atom bomb, and they misused that mathematical formula of what to do with atomic energy. And unless we eliminate this obstacle, we will be unable to function in the higher mind and manifest higher thinking. Imagination that is based on selfish interests, like copyright. I'm going to copyright this formula. I'm going to copyright this idea. I'm going to copyright the Bible. I'm going to copyright the teaching so that I own it. And nobody else has access except through me. Sorry, my lower self is talking a little bit there. Because it really bugs me. I was thinking how when our choir was active and we were really into it, and I would go to a major city and I would purchase music for us to sing and bring it back, and then darn it, we couldn't sing it without copyright permission. Doesn't make sense. How can somebody write a beautiful piece of music but will not allow us to sing it unless we get permission? And so we had to pay through the nose through this company to get permission to sing, even practice or rehearse this music. So there's something not right. And it's all about money and greed. Or not all, but mostly about So imagination that is based on selfish interest causes complicated distortions within the impressions we receive and causes us to lose our magnetism. Higher thinking makes us radioactive. Oh, man. We are advised to keep our eyes pure in the joy of beauty, to be able to protect ourselves from the danger of degenerative imagination. Imagination based on selfish, separative interests and earthly desires. True thinking is creative. True thinking destroys limitations and separative walls. In true thinking, there is no possessiveness. Such a person does not hide his light under a bushel. There is abundance and sharing. There is no intention to dominate, but only to serve. Oftentimes, people who have stored a lot of knowledge in their lower minds, knowledge gained from reading books, will take that knowledge and use it to dominate others and to take on possessiveness of that knowledge. But those who are thinkers and who have worked hard on themselves to access higher thinking use their gained information for the path of transformation. The next hindrance to higher thinking is pollution found in the brain and the nervous system. This means it is almost impossible to exercise higher thinking when our brain is polluted with hallucinogenic drugs, alcohol, tobacco, and misuse of the sacral center. I'm going to skip over some of this. Meditation, some great ones, wise ones, advises, I got to back up a minute. This is too important to forget. We're talking about pollution of the atmosphere. Pollution in the atmosphere makes it extremely difficult these days to contact the higher currents of creative energies. A co-worker a few years ago wrote to me asking what was happening to her. Where she used to be able to easily function in higher thinking realms during her meditation, it was now becoming progressively difficult, and at other times impossible. The answer, unfortunately, is because of the pollution found in our atmosphere. Some great ones, in fact, wise ones, advise us not to meditate when the atmosphere pollution is intense. The channels must be clear and pure to render communication between the higher forces and receivers. Oh, I'm so out of time. I'm going to get through 3, 4, and 5. So another hindrance to higher thinking is a mind that is clogged with old and destructive thought forms. Crystallized thought forms such as vanity and pride and illusion and fanaticism. The fourth hindrance are the glamours found in our emotional sphere. Glamours distort the rays of impression and makes higher thinking almost impossible. Glamours are the images in our aura of those objects which we emotionally identify ourselves, such as images that consume the energy of higher impression and grows like weeds in our aura. There are many minds which become the slaves of glamour. This is very common. People serve their glamours without even knowing about it. A glamour such as the glamour of the love of being loved, the glamour of the one at the center, the glamour of physical strength, the glamour of popularity, the glamour of personal wisdom. It is only in the moment of a painful trapping that a person realizes the power of their glamours. And the fifth hindrance to higher thinking is the lack of concentration. When a person has developed power over their lower nature, they may then have the ability to concentrate their mind and life in any chosen direction or on any chosen object. Willpower comes into action when you develop mastery over your mental body. And I can close with this. And we'll pick up on the other ideas sometime in the future. Purification of our mental body and continuous mental discipline eventually brings our mind under the control of our human soul. This is what we are challenged to do. Higher thinking cannot be carried on in the mental plane until our mental body is controlled and purified. Fluctuations of the emotional body and changing physical moods are dangerous signs that higher thinking cannot be exercised. Thought control is of prime importance. Those who can control their thoughts can control their emotional states and their physical moods. This is not dumbing down. This is not being an emotional numblock. In other words, an unfeeling person or a person who looks at you like a stone when you're talking to. It's not that. It's control over the fluctuations of your emotional body and physical moods. This kind of control means that your human soul can now exercise higher thinking. And finally, concentration. Concentration is the ability to sustain this voltage, this higher energy, higher frequency of the increasing energies, and then directing them into proper channels without losing the voltage and the intent of the energies. We covered quite a bit this morning, so I hope you enjoyed it. Learned a lot, and now let's get to work.